Hello, everyone, and welcome to our webinar today on communicating with healthcare professionals for biopharma companies in the digital era. I am your host today. I am Jamie Boland, the head of product marketing and content here at Magnolia. And I will be joined by two experts who have a really deep understanding of this field and lots of experience. Erin Veronese from Atypical Digital and Britt Wrights from Crescendo Collective. Before we jump in, we actually have a question for you. If you go over to the polls section, this little helpful pop-up has arrived, you will see our first question, which is what has stopped you from engaging with more HCPs online? There you'll see a wide variety of potential answers, and we will be back with the results soon. While I'm showing you the right of the screen, you will see we have a chat box where you can introduce yourself, add any discussion that you want to. You'll also see a docs tab, which has some great materials we think will be really helpful for anyone who's interested in this topic. And you'll also see Q&A, where you can ask us any questions, which we'll get to at the end of the session. You'll also see at the top, you can sign up for our Biopharma newsletter to get loads of great information and context on everything that is happening in the world of digital communications for biopharma. Also, I know life can sometimes get in the way of a great webinar, so if anything happens, please don't worry. We will have the recording to follow up that you can check and review at your leisure. With a nice glass of wine, maybe get some friends over for a great classic webinar. Now, I would like to introduce today's expert speakers, because it wouldn't be much of a conversation if it was just me talking, would it? So first off, I would like to introduce Britt Wrights from Crescendo.
Yes, I did it.
She's here. Would you like to introduce yourself a bit, Britt? Tell us everything.
Yeah. Hi. Thanks, Jamie. My name is Britt Wrights. I do digital strategy at Crescendo with pharmaceutical companies. I come to this industry actually from the marketing angle. So I spent enough decades that it would date me if I told you in digital marketing. And now I have been working with pharmaceutical companies as working with them on a global and a local level to help them specifically with engaging healthcare professionals, dealing with compliance, things like that across the global markets.
Fantastic. And we're also joined by Erin Veronese from Atypical. Could you tell us a little bit about yourself, please, Erin?
Sure. Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining today. I'm Erin Veronese, and I'm the VP of the Life Sciences Division for Atypical Digital. My background is fully in the healthcare industry for about 15 years now, working in manufacturing before coming over to the agency side about 5 years ago. So I also work with healthcare companies and help them in a variety of different ways. So excited to be here today.
Thank you so much. I think this is going to be a really kind of fascinating space to talk about what's a really fast evolving world in the biotech space and the biopharma. I am going to take away our slides so people can just see us talking. Am I though? There's the button. Fantastic. That's much nicer. So I think actually, and talking about that speed of change, how changes in the industry and people's behavior changed biopharma's relationship and approach to digital communications with healthcare professionals? Erin, what's led that change recently?
Yeah, I think digital was becoming more and more prominent prior to COVID, but that has escalated that significantly. And how are you able to reach and engage with your target audiences in ways where they are constantly, being inundated with different communications and information, how are you able to work through that noise and engage with them at the right time and when they have the time to be able to consume the type of information and content that's going to be most relevant to them? So I think COVID really, expedited that in a lot of different ways. And then as Gen AI and personalization has continued to become more and more prominent, that has also, had a rapid change within the industry.
Absolutely. What do you think, Britt? Have you seen those same factors?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's important to remember that, like we had all of these things that happened during COVID, and we thought that we were preparing for a COVID world, and then we would go back to normal afterwards. And what we found is in post-COVID, we've all decided that there are a lot of things that we want to keep. And so, healthcare professionals are no different. It's important to remember that they're people like everybody else. And so they have taken on a lot of those habits. A lot of them are doing more of their work digitally. I haven't been into a doctor's office, I think, since COVID, and I see a doctor regularly. They're used to, personalized marketing, like Aaron said. Anymore, if you get something that you think you should already know, that I'm not interested in that, we expect that. We expect that from everybody that's talking to us, and it's no different from healthcare professionals, I think.
So the feeling, from this and from the other kind of work we've been doing in the biopharma space is everyone knows that digital is very much the push in this space. But I think now is actually a really good time to look at the results of our poll. And thank you everyone for voting, because I think, knowing that you have to do something is also not the same as actually getting it implemented, especially in a big organization. So I think there's some really interesting answers here. And I think by far and away, the biggest reason is that people aren't working more with HCPs online is compliance. Although the cost and I would assume lack of expertise rather than having too much expertise would be the answer there. And then now a vote for tech as well. So I think this is really interesting that's compliance seems like the main problem, but also there's a real spread of things that matter to people. Erin, does that reflect what you've been seeing in the market and working with your clients?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think for our industry, compliance is always top of mind for everyone. Being able to make sure that you are compliant, that you're following the guidelines that you need to, that you're up to date as different requirements evolve and change, and having concerns from a digital perspective of there being sometimes some gray areas between what can you do or what can you not do. So I've worked with many clients that have that as top of mind with them, and making sure that, what are you able to do and how do you navigate through that is really important. And then also having the technology and infrastructure and expertise and investments. So all of those other items that came up in the poll, I think, are top of mind with them as well.
And Britt, have you seen similar concerns?
Yeah, absolutely. I think when it comes to compliance, the issue that holds people back is like, is it worth it? Right? I think everybody knows that there is a way to be compliant with just about any tool. But the question is the lift worth it? And so I think that you have to have a team that understands the balance between, this is the result that you're going to get out of the lift that you're going to put in. Sometimes we see people err so much on the side of being compliant that they just shut everything down, right? And then all of the efforts that you put into building these portals or building omnichannels and things like that, it's not effective because you've gone too far and nobody can see anything. But by the same token, if you're, trying to manage every single article that you publish or every piece of content that comes out one at a time and updating, that's obviously overwhelming. So you have to have a team that understands where that balance is. And to Aaron's point, there's technology that helps with that to take off some of that lift so that you can find that right mix, so that to use the horrible acronym, but so that your ROI actually makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, ultimately this is a business decision about where it's going to be able to drive results. And I think there's an interesting kind of thing I want to pick up there actually, Britt, is on compliance. It's, we're talking about biopharma companies who work globally, but actually compliance is always a very regional question. How can companies really kind of think about that across different regions, but trying to build global solutions?
Yeah, that's a really good point. I think that when you are building platforms or various technology solutions, you have to think about how will they adapt to the way the end users are using it, right? And the end users being, is that a global scale? Is it a regional scale? And building in there the idea of, like I said, like how is it going to be able to adapt? Are you going to be able to have the flexibility where you can have a platform or a workflow that works on a global level that is really easy to teach and really easy to manage, but also can adapt for, the regulations in the Middle East versus the regulations in Western Europe versus the regulations in the United States, without everybody having to have their own individual thing. So I think that is the key when it comes, and definitely something to consider, because it's just not practical to have everybody have their own thing, right? Like that would just be an astronomical cost. But everyone sort of has their own thing. So you have to think about that when you're building in and figure out what needs to be able to adapt and what needs to be standardized so that you can, make life easier and save money.
And Erin, how have you approached that kind of balance of global strategy and, regional compliance?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's when it comes down to having a robust strategy that accounts for all of those different nuances and variations, and then also gives you the opportunity to identify where is there overlap. So really being intentional and strategic in your marketing efforts and the technologies that you're using, all of that I think becomes really interconnected with each other, because you want to be able to have a plan that from the top down your organization is able to be leveraging, but also those that are the individual contributors are also able to go back to that plan and understand in their day-to-day what are they doing and how does that work up to the overall strategy of your organization and the individual tactics that you might be executing on.
Absolutely, I completely agree. So we've kind of talked a lot about why this matters, but actually, we talked about why that this is important to do, and that going from this is important to do to actually doing it is a much trickier question. That's why we're all here. Britt, how do you work with a pharma company or a biopharma company to make that business case for a digital investment and make that change from quite deep-rooted strategy, different strategies in the business?
Well, for us, it always, and I think for everybody, it always comes down to business use cases, right? So you want to look at specifically. I mean, you don't ever invest in anything just because it's the cool thing to do, right? So you want to look at what is it that you need to do better? Where is it that you need to perform better in order to, I'm just going to say it, make more money, right? Like reach more people, blah, blah, blah. But where is it that you need to, what is it specifically that you need to do? Do you need to be engaging with HCPs more? Do you need to be reaching new HCPs? Whatever it is, what's your business case there? And then from there, you can determine, okay, what are the solutions that we need to meet this problem? What is the budget that makes sense for what it is that we're hoping to accomplish? You look at it, I think, strategically, like you would any other business case. It's not about being the newest and the coolest, as fun as that is in our industry. But when you're talking to people who are actually making these decisions, I think it's really important to, look at it in terms of numbers and in terms of real world, how is this going to make your business better?
And Erin, would you have anything to, that was a very thorough answer, but
yeah,
is there anything to build on there?
Yeah, just to add a little bit to that, I think AI has obviously become something that's top of mind for a lot of individuals. And it's, I consider it partially like the shiny penny at the moment because everyone is really interested and excited about it. But how does this actually work for my company and how can I use it? And that's where, we've been approached by many clients within this space to help navigate through that, because they know that they want to do it, but there's a lot of concerns around, should I do it? Can I do it? What are the security concerns around doing it? Is that opening me up to issues, or what could that be? But I think that's where it goes back to, when we speak to these individuals, it's like, well, what are the tools and technologies that you're utilizing today? A lot of times you might be using AI in some capacity and not even know it, or have the functionality within systems that you have, or things that could be added on to existing systems that can help you be more efficient, be more cost effective in areas, but then also make sure that you're not just going to chat GPT online and coming back with claims for your product, because that's obviously not going to work very well. But there's also
awfully quickly.
Yeah, exactly. So everyone's going to obviously avoid things like that, but then there's somewhere in the middle where you can help move your organization forward in a variety of different capacities, from operational to marketing or sales, customer service and support. There's really use cases within every department within an organization that it can be leveraged. So the advice that we're giving individuals today is, make sure that you're educating yourself on what's out there and how AI works and how you might be able to leverage it. Make sure that there is understanding of where your organization is at, and what policies might be in place or should be in place related to that, and then how can you start leveraging it to help you.
Absolutely. And Britt, how are you approaching AI with your clients in this space? And as bearing in mind how we know everyone is worried about compliance as well, which is
right.
a very
Absolutely.
very
And I
thorny
mean,
issue.
yeah, compliance is always first, right? I think, first of all, like Aaron mentioned, it's important to look at, what do you already have available? Sometimes you need a whole new solution. Sometimes you just need a tweak to the solution that you currently have. But the other, super professional. But the other thing here, yeah. But the other thing is, again, going back to business use case, right? Where does it make sense to use AI? Does it, like Aaron said, going to chat GPT, that one, and saying, write me 20 articles about this study, and then let's have regulations look over it. I mean, that doesn't make any sense, right? Whereas having something that actually has been taught regional MLR and can scan your content and knows already how to create content that's either more likely to be pass MLR, or can tell you, review your content, or even something just as simple as, making sure, like, hey, is all of this content up to web standards? I mean, that's a really easy use case that we don't see used often enough. But so, yeah, it comes down to making sure using it where it makes sense. Where is it actually going to make your business better? Whether that's because you're being more efficient, or because you're putting out a better product and a better user experience.
No, that absolutely makes sense. I think it's a very kind of judicious approach to where this is applied. It's a careful one. Yeah. I think actually, while we're kind of talking about this around kind of what is, often a marketing tool, but applying that to HCP comms, it'd be really interesting to talk about other kind of marketing tools and how they can, or techniques, and how they can work with HCP engagement. For example, how could something like personalization work in this kind of portal space, and help give HCPs what they're looking for in the content and drive that? Erin, is that something you've worked with, or are working with at the moment, working towards at the moment?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's really important. A lot of us here probably understand the importance of personalization, but I think that starts with understanding your audience and what's the type of content and information that's going to be most relevant to them, and how do you manage that in a digestible and efficient way. So that's when the tool utilization becomes really important. Because for one, how do you make sure that you are segmenting your audience in ways and have data to support the infrastructure that you want to be able to build? So whether it's on a website or in an email or whatever other way someone might be engaging with content with your organization, you have that infrastructure in place to be able to facilitate that, and then use the right tools like modular content that allows you to be able to pull in and out the right information at the right time, so you're able to hit your audiences with that correct message. Because ideally we're wanting them to navigate through a journey, right? So that could mean a lot of different things. Are they familiar with your product or your organization in some sort of way? Are they doing general research? Are they comparing all different alternatives? Are they looking for a case study? Are they in the middle of an evaluation of your product? Are they ready to purchase? There's all these different mindsets that we're wanting to be speaking to all at the same time. So understanding that journey and who they are and what's going to resonate the most with them, and be able to have that user experience be in a place that you can get them where they want to go as quickly and efficiently as possible is the ideal scenario that you want to be accounting for.
Absolutely. And Britt, how have you been looking at personalization and what that can bring to the HCP field? I saw you nodding very enthusiastically before.
Yeah, well, I mean, because even when you said like what other marketing tools, personalization is obviously the first thing that comes to mind, I think, for a lot of us. As I mentioned earlier, that's what we expect as consumers and digital users in our own lives. We expect personalization. I think when you're building solutions, there's a couple of things that you should expect in this day and age for personalization, right? It's a lot more than just my name in the heading and the right kind of content because I'm an anesthesiologist, right? It should be able to learn as you're going through that journey. So it's not just a one-time segmentation. It should be able to, Aaron mentioned that we're going through a user journey. So that data on the back end should reflect that. I shouldn't be getting the same information on day one as I'm getting 6 months into our relationship. Right. So I think that your solutions need to be able to learn and update. I also think that, we have so many solutions and so much technology, and oftentimes they're very disconnected. And that doesn't make any sense. If the goal of personalization is not only to make sure you're hitting them with the right information at the right time, but to make the entire conversation, that entire relationship better. So it should connect with, your CMS and your CRM and all of your different acronyms should all connect seamlessly and easily so that you can take advantage of the personalization and the information that people are giving you about themselves, especially in this day and age when we're both, you better know me, and also, but I don't want to tell you anything about myself because I don't want you to know me too well and track me. And I think that's creepy. Any little bit of information that we get, we need to make sure that we're in a place to make the most of it, right? And that everybody can use it because it probably costs us something to get that information. So let's make sure your field agent and your email marketing and right down to who's ever running your, display ads, they better all be able to have access and benefit from that information. And I think the last thing is basically that it comes down to also, how do you make it so that it is usable by all of these different end users? When you're building a solution, make sure that that's something that can benefit, people in different locations and people at different ends of that journey.
Absolutely. I think that's, I'm looking over the poll again. I think what we've covered really well on technology and the technology people can use. And I think we've made very clear where people can find expertise on doing this if they haven't done it, if they don't have that in-house. I think it'd be good for us to kind of go a bit more head on compliance and maybe a little more in depth on what people can do to build that compliance internally. Aaron, what are the kind of more concrete steps companies can do to ensure that their digital content is compliant with their market or their regulatory environment? Mm-hmm.
Well, I think, a lot of companies have processes and procedures in place that you have to require. So I think that or follow. So I think that making sure that you understand what your processes are, who needs to be involved in different regulatory approvals or compliance, make sure that from the top down, everyone is understanding and aligned in what you can or cannot do, or if you are doing something, who needs to be involved with that. I think that goes back to the process and the requirements there, making sure, again, I know we've touched on tools and the information itself, but making sure we're going to keep going back to that and the data as well, because they're all so interconnected. So that's where I still feel like there is such a connection with that. And then making sure that there's the understanding and education of what can you and what can you not do. And then again, since that varies depending on where you are globally, making sure that there's an understanding there is what's going to be most important.
And Britt, how about you and, facing these compliance challenges for biopharma?
Yeah, I think one thing, it sounds so simple, but it's like, understand the basic rules, right? And make sure that everybody on your team understands the basic rules instead of don't just depend on MLR. Don't just, sometimes we'll have crazy things come to us and, somebody in the room should be able to say, let's save ourselves 3 weeks. That's not going to fly, right? So just having everybody have some basic understanding. And that being said, go back and check, right? Before you launch some big initiative. It's so much easier to sort of, this is the one case where, ask for permission instead of forgiveness applies, I think. It's also, and don't make assumptions, especially when you're working, it's easy to say, if you work on a global level, that you understand things on a global level. But as we said before, compliance doesn't happen on a global level. So don't make assumptions that just because this worked for your client in this part of the world, that it's going to work for even their neighbor in another country. Check. I mean, we have a really easy example is in the Gulf region, right? We've had really ambitious, awesome people say, oh, well, we should do all of this in Arabic. You can't. Legally, it has to be in English in some of those countries. So it's one of those things where it's like, you just have to have people in the room that somebody has to be the expert on a local level. But everybody should be at least a general expert, I think, to just save you time,
Yeah, that kind of quick sense check.
Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely. So we've talked a lot about strategy and how we set up and start moving in this direction. But I think anyone who's run a project within or with a big company knows you kind of have to, nothing gets done without a clear idea of what success will look like, or at least nothing good. Britt, how do you go about establishing the KPIs for a project like this and working with leadership in a company to paint what success will look like?
Well, I'm going to bang the business use drum again, but that's always what we start with,
Good
right?
drum.
Like, yeah, what is it? What's the point, right? That's always the thing. Like if we're talking about websites or a portal or whatever, what's the point? Why are you doing this? How does this help your company make money? And then, okay, so we have to tie it back to digital. What is the metric that most closely aligns with that? Because it's really, really easy to get caught up in vanity metrics and be, oh, this is awesome. We ranked for a whole bunch of new keywords. Yeah, but it's toothpaste. Who cares? Right? Like, who cares that you rank for toothpaste, your cancer drug or whatever? Like, you have to make sure that these metrics make sense. And yeah, we always start with the closest to the funnel, right? Or the closest to the end of the funnel, the closest to where you actually make money. And our first KPI is with whatever tool you're using or, whether it's a marketing campaign, website or whatever, what KPI is closest to that end goal. And then, sort of back out from there. So it's not a one size fits all. Those are the KPIs that make you money.
That makes sense. And Erin, how do you establish success with your clients, or what success will look like?
Yeah, I think it really comes down to the strategy and their goals and what do you want to accomplish and how you're going to get there. I think for us, the biggest thing that we want to be able to help companies with are where are you today and where do you want to go and what are the things that are going to help get you there, because there's never a lack of things that needed to get done in a day. So whether you're have an internal team or working with an external team or doing a blend between the two, there's always way too many things that could be done, especially from a marketing perspective. And what we've found is that, marketers are expected to be experts in all of these different things. So you are a content expert, you're a social media expert, you're a website expert, paid media. The list can go on and on and on of the different things that as a marketer you're expected to have an understanding of, and how do you navigate and prioritize what's going to be most impactful to move your organization forward. So that's where we really hone in on what is the strategy, what is your goal, what is your high level goal, is that revenue, is that units sold, whatever that could be, and then where are you at today? So then you can identify what is working and what's not working. The reasons why I love digital is because it gives you more transparency to things. The days of traditional marketing, I think, are gone in that sense, but there still could even be a value in doing traditional like marketing activities, but then making sure you have a digital spin. So are they coming into your website? Where are they going then? What are they doing next? All of those pieces still need to work together and then be tracked and measured on the back end. And so that's where we spend a lot of time trying to close that loop, because you can have impressions or clicks and all these great metrics, but what does that mean for your business and how is that moving you forward? If you're able to identify how those activities then roll up to what you want to accomplish within a strategy, then great, leverage them. If you are just trying to measure them because you think you're supposed to, then I'd probably recommend shifting that approach a bit, because I think you get lost in the metrics and you can go down all of these different rabbit holes trying to figure something out, where if you really identify the strategy, the plan, and the goals that you want to reach, you'll be able to pretty transparently be able to see along the way, are you reaching those the way that you want to? Are you on track or are you not? If you aren't, what do you need to maybe change? If something is working, do more of that. If something isn't working, do less of that as quickly as you can. That's where I like digital, because it allows you that shift and flexibility more so. And then having the connectivity on the back end to have it transparently show this worked or this didn't work. And then that'll be your compass for you to move forward and prioritize when you have all of these things coming at you in a day, what's going to be most impactful for you.
That totally makes sense to me. I love that about digital too, about for the good and for bad, there's not much place to hide.
Yeah, and sometimes it's bad, but it is what it is, right? We all would love for you to be able to have metrics that are, tripling every quarter and doing well. And a lot of times that happens and that's awesome. And then there's time that it doesn't. So how do you shift and pivot and adjust as quickly as you can and do more of those things that are working for you?
Yeah. And, actually maybe I'll put that into the product team at Magnolia. They just show that something that just shows the good metrics. The most flattering dashboard. Cool. So thank you so much, both of you. I think it's time to move on to the Q&A section. And before, as a quick reminder to everyone, you can ask us questions. You can ask Britt and Aaron anything you want, or me, but they're more interesting than me. But before we have we answer your questions. Do you have any questions? That's the wrong slide. We have a question for you, which is, what marketing topics are most important to you around generative AI in biopharma? So you will see that in the polls question, in the poll section. And you can answer that, and you can ask us any other questions that you have. So our first question, wait, hold on. Let's put our face back on. Our first question is from Michael Schneider, which is, what are the preferred channels and formats for HCPs to get information from biopharma companies? Erin, what have you seen working?
That's a good question. I honestly, we work with a lot of different companies, and it could mean a lot of different things. I think going back to the strategy and goals and different touch points that are working for companies is it can definitely vary in a lot of different ways. So I don't know if there's one that like is the only one that works, which is obviously what makes it a little bit more complicated. I don't know, Britt.
If it was easy, everyone was doing it.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know,
Okay,
Britt.
so this is where I'm gonna. This reminds me of when we talk to an analyst, right? And you ask them for an answer, and they say, "Well, it depends." I'm like, "No, it doesn't. Pretend it doesn't." so I'm gonna say pretend it doesn't depend, right? I'm gonna say like generically, right? There are two ways of connecting with HCPs that I see be most effective in terms of getting them to engage and convert in the way that a client is usually looking for. And the first one's going to be email. And the second one is going to be, it sounds weird to say as a channel, but organic search. Repeatedly, anything that they consume or get to from those two drivers, they're going to respond to better. Email, I don't, for all of the reasons, right? It's personal. It should be personal. It's coming directly to them. If you can get past the noise, if they actually read it, they're probably going to respond better to whatever they see it. Organic search, because we all we trust ourselves more than anybody, right? So if I go looking for something and I find it, I'm going to believe it more than if you come to me and say, hey, this is a thing that I need. So if I had to choose, and I'm the kind of person who has a favorite movie, a favorite book, I'm happy to choose. And I will say email and organic search are going to be the ones that perform the best.
I love it. I love it when we plant a flag because Erin, I know that I'm much more on your side of, there's a lot of ways to do this.
I'm probably going to get an email from my boss being like, are you kidding me? But no, that's my answer.
I'd love to actually build on that with the discussion of organic search. So I think we've talked a lot about, we've talked a lot around, portals and making sure that you communicate to an authenticated user, to an HCP, that inherently you will have to log in and authenticate your identity to do that. How does that sit with SEO, with driving organic search?
Yeah, that's a good question. And we have one client where we spent a year working with them because they had a very smart digital team that understood the value of organic search, like the literal, dollars and cents values. It converts better, and it's just it's much less expensive, right? So it's each lead, each engagement costs a lot less. And they decided, they doubled down and spent about a year working on their HCP portals specifically to improve SEO. And within that year, they had about a 4 times increase, right, from beginning to end. Nice. And so they had to, but again, they have compliance like everybody else, right? And so some of the things that they had to do was, when I was talking about, don't just assume you go the strictest, right? Don't just cut off all of your content. Not all of it has to be gated. Put something out there that can be found if possible. The other thing is there are ways with technology to be compliant and still be visible. These are two just very, very basic answers that, take the time to optimize your portals. There's very, very basic things, but things that we just don't see happening a lot. And when this client, invested the time into doing that, they saw substantial results from it. But it took a lot of mind shift change for that, because it was something that it's just not done. It's just something that's thought of as like, that doesn't make sense. We don't do that. But when they went through the education and sort of developed these web standards to encourage that behavior, everybody saw results from that on a local and a global level. So
fantastic.
It's definitely a marathon, not a sprint.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think that's an excellent note for us to end on with any discussion of this on this topic. Thank you both so much. We have one last poll for everyone. which luckily this is a very easy yes or no question, which will be, would you like us to secure your spot for our upcoming webinar on generative AI in biopharma? Hopefully you will do. And I just want to quickly share that the results. I think everyone seems interested across the board in different things in AI and biopharma, but I think the winner there is SEO and content optimization. So we clearly touched on a nerve there. So that's fantastic. Thank you all. All that's left for me is to say thank you to everyone. Firstly, to all of you for attending, for being such an engaged audience, to the team behind the scenes here at Magnolia who've put this together, and particularly to Erin and Britt for joining us today. It's been a fantastic discussion, and I've really appreciated it. I've learned a lot and really enjoyed it. Thank you very much, everyone, and hope you can download our HCP white paper with this QR code if you want to learn even more. Thank you. Goodbye, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.